because even in Kenya, when you look at inside the country, you tend to see different waves. You see, or what we call surges or waves, as you do, like, the language really doesn't matter. But you see the first time, if you look at the African curve, it goes up, comes down, and then starts to go up again. It's the same thing you see in Kenya, where we had the first surge, comes down, and then starts to go up again. That reflects several things. That may reflect, one, the level of urbanization, for example, because we know the virus travels with people. So the more people are together, the more you expect that the virus will spread faster, because it moves from one person to another. Places that have low populations or densities will have very low transmission rates to begin with. The next big factor is movement. And this is also something you need to reflect on, that as people say that the virus has been slow in Africa, we have to remember why. It's obviously because urbanization is lower in Africa, movement is lower in Africa than it is in Europe and other places, and therefore you expect that, because even movement is very low. If you look at our African continent, people are moving around on foot, others are moving, majority are moving on border, where when you look at places like Europe, people are moving in trains, and they're moving in massive numbers from place to place. So of course that affects the rate at which the virus moves from one place to another. So in Kenya, you see the same. We started off with Nairobi and Mombasa for a very long time in the first surge. We knew that up to 70% of all the cases in Kenya were coming from 5 counties. They were coming from Nairobi and the surrounding counties, Machakos, Kajiado, Kiambu, and then Mombasa. And they were accounting to almost 80% of the cases. But then if you look at the second surge, you start to see that actually Nairobi and Mombasa and others have now a much lower acceleration, and where we are getting now the acceleration is from the other counties. So that tells you that it is likely that you'll end up with another third surge, because it depends across the continent, number one, because if you look at the continent, you'll see it's north, east, and south, and then you're going to start seeing probably another surge of numbers coming now from the Central Africa and West Africa. So I'm basically making this point to say that the fact that you see a curve coming down doesn't mean that's the end of it. And because populations are not homogeneous. They are not all the same. They're different. And therefore, the rate at which the virus spreads and the point at which it starts to accelerate depends on the geography of that particular area, in country or in continent or even across the world. So you'll see that, that pattern. So we expect that even as we see the current surge in Kenya coming down, you could still end up with another third surge on another cohort of counties. Just like across the continent, we are likely to see another surge on another cohort of countries. So we need to remember that. So what does this mean? This basically means that the pandemic conversation and control will continue. And therefore, we need to pay attention to the studies that are being presented here in terms of the impact this is having on communities. It is likely that we'll end up with what we call a bumpy tail. So you have a surge, down, a surge, down, a surge, down, until the tail disappears and goes flat. So pandemic control measures, their impacts on communities are critical for us to continue monitoring. That's the first message. The next thing is that we have seen, of course, whenever you have a surge, deaths increase. The first surge, we had a few deaths. Now we've seen the deaths increase. And we've seen now the surge is coming down in Kenya. We've seen, I think, yesterday, the positivity rate was about 8%. So you see that coming down, and we continue to come down. But we should expect that we may have another rise. So we have to pay attention to the festive season, for example. Because these surges, other than movement of people and urbanization, are also related to the kind of measures. So originally we had we never had a lockdown in Kenya, but we had high-level escalated measures. And then they have been relaxed. Then we have seen a surge that's related to movement and such other things. But then as we move forward, we expect that during the festive season, people are going to congregate and they're going to spend more time together. So we expect to see another maybe rise positivity rate in January.